In this session, we are going to talk about the levels of calculation that are present in Tableau. We have earlier talked about that there are three levels of calculations which we can do. One is a row level calculation, which we compute for every row in the data or every record in the data. We do a calculation. Then they are row level calculation. Then we also have an aggregate level calculations, which are purely performed based on the dimension. The aggregation happens based on the dimension that we define in the view of the data. Based on the view, whatever the dimensions that are available in the view of the data, the aggregation is performed using the aggregate level calculation. Then we also have a table level calculation. See, this is a slightly different form. See, first an aggregate level calculation is performed. Whatever the result that comes from the aggregate level calculation, that result is actually stored in a cache. And the table calculation is actually applied on the results that are coming from the aggregate level calculations before they are sent to the view. So it's not a specific query which we are writing as a part of the formula. It's the aggregate level calculation itself, right? When we are getting the aggregated result, those results are stored in the cache, and we are really applying the table based calculations to this data that got stored in the cache before we are displaying that as a part of the view. So we'll discuss the table related calculations slightly later, whereas the row level and the aggregate level, they are processed as a part of the query that we are writing in that query editor, in that code editor, based on the data source engine. Based on the data source, on that data source we are writing the query, and based on that we are retrieving the values from the data source. So what we'll do is, we'll first look at a row level calculation, a small example associated with the row level, and then slowly we move on to, let's say, an aggregate level. Let's look at both the calculations to get a primary hold on the calculations aspect. Okay, I'll use the same copy chain query to do this, right? So if required, let's say, okay, this is the data. Agreed. Now what I really want to see is, we have computed some profit percentage, or let's compute the profit percentage itself. Right now I will not have this, so I'll create a field called profit percentage. So I'll go into this analysis. I say create calculated field, and I'm saying profit percentage. I'm creating some new field called profit percentage, and I am writing some kind of a formula, right? So the formula that I am writing is profit divided by the sales. Okay, so this is a simple row level calculation, and I am saying apply. The moment I am applying it, the profit percentage came in as a measure here because it's a calculation, right? Let me say okay. I come here, and if required I can view this data to see how the calculation actually came out, right? I can very well look at the data. Oh, there was a problem connecting to the editor. Let's see what is the problem. Okay, now it is able to connect. Now I can view the data here, and when I viewed it, you could see that okay, the profit percentage got computed 0.42, 0.35, 0.4, right, 0.3, 0.2, so some such kind, 0.08, etc, etc. Now let's say for each of them, for each of the profit percentage, I want to give some kind of a classification, right? Profit percentage, right? If I say if the profit percentage is less than 0, I call it as loss. Let's say if it is 0 to 25, or probably it is like 0 to 0.25, I call it as a moderate gain, and anything greater than 0.25, I call it as an exceptional gain, right? So some such kind of representation I really want to do at a row level. For each row I want to do the profit category. I'll call it as a profit category, and I want to create one more field. So I'll say profit category. So we can use that if then else kind of statement. So I'll say if. Now you see it's a very simplified kind of aspect, right? I can simply say if. Now I will simply use, right, if what is the value profit percentage. So let me pull in this profit percentage. If profit percentage is less than 0, then, right, if profit percentage is less than 0, I simply say loss. Else if, we have else if again the profit percentage, if it is lying between 0 and 20.25. Now I don't need to say greater than 0 and less than 0.25, right? Because this is already less than 0, it's not less than 0, so it's always greater than 0 itself. So I could simply say less than 0.25. Then I can write it like this. Then I can say moderate profit. Finally, if all the scenarios are over, I'll simply say else high profit. Right? So once I am done with all the scenarios, I'm simply ending it with end. So you are seeing the help of each of the formulas here. Now this is a kind of a slightly lengthier formula that we are creating. Right? If profit percentage is less than 0, I am saying this, loss, moderate profit, high profit. Let's try to apply it. Now because this is a text, it got created as a part of the dimension. Right? We have used that if, then, else if, end kind of a statement. And because it will return a string, either loss or moderate profit or high profit, you could see that this is shown as a part of the dimension here, the profit category. And now I can use it just like any other dimension. The dimension is used for slicing the data, it is used for defining the level of detail, or it is used for grouping. So generally any dimension, I can use it for slicing the data, I can use it for defining the level of detail of the data, or I can even use it for grouping purpose. Now this is a new measure that got created, which I can use exactly for that purpose, right? So when so here we have created a row level calculation which is a measure. Here we have created a row level calculation which is a dimension. So depending on how the output comes out, what is the calculation, what is the output of the calculation, or what is the type of the calculation, Tableau automatically categorizes it into a measure or into a dimension. And probably if required, I can very well change it from one to other depending on the necessity. But if you simply see these two, there is an equal to sign before them, here and here, right, which is a clear indication that this is a calculated field. All the calculated fields are shown by the type equal to as a part of its formula definition. Fine. Now, just to check out our data, whether the product profitability category is created right or not, we can click on this link which can help us to go to the data. Right now, the profit category here, they are all high profit, there is a moderate profit, there are a few losses. So across the data, we are seeing high profit, moderate profit, or loss kind of values. So I can very well differentiate the data, and probably I can slice it, dice it, whatever to my level of requirement. So the new fields that we have created also are clearly seen. So that's how we work with row level kind of calculation. Now let's say I want to aggregate it, right? I want to do some kind of aggregate level calculations. So it's basically, I want to see in this example, right, the same profitability percentage, right? I want to look at a profit percentage, but this time I don't want it for each row. I want to compute it, I want to aggregate it, let's say market wise, or I want to aggregate it, let's say product wise or product type wise. So I want to aggregate the profit, means I want to sum up all the profits and I want to divide it by all the sales which are specific to that particular dimension. So that is what we are calling as aggregate. We are not looking at a row level kind of a calculation. So when I am saying profit percentage, now I am not interested in each individual record. I am more interested in the accumulated kind of stuff. Now for that, okay, I call it as accumulated profit. I'll create a new field, right? I'll create a calculated field called accumulated profit, right? So this, instead of simply saying profit divided by sale, now I am summing up the entire profit, right? Okay, I am summing up the entire profit, or probably let me type it, that is more easier. I am summing up the entire profit and I am dividing it by the sum of entire sales. So I am summing up the profit and I am dividing it by the sales. So this time this is not applied to every row, right? Because this is an aggregate level stuff. This is an aggregate level stuff. Accumulated profit is the field. But now if you look at here, you will not get this accumulated profit as, okay, here we got this accumulated profit, right, which could have been computed for each of the profits out here. But when we are representing it, now the way it gets represented, let's look at it. I drag this accumulated profit, right? I drag this accumulated profit, let's say on the columns. So I am getting this is my accumulated profit. So it is shown as AGG, means it's an aggregated value. That is what it is showing as. It is an aggregated value. It is not doing the summation as per our requirement. Now I can very well do this aggregation, let's say market wise. Okay, so now it is showing me at a market level. Okay, Central is having around 35% accumulated profit. East is having 33%. South is having a 31% profit, whereas West is having 27%. So overall, I could say West is having a much limited profit. Probably the same thing I can very well look at it in a tabular form as well, which becomes more easy for me to relate. So the Central is having the highest profit, the West is having the lowest profit. So that is one thing that I could have done when I simply looked at the aggregation of the profit. Now the same way, if I say no, I don't want market wise, I want product type wise. So coffee is giving me 34% profit, whereas all others are somewhere in the range of 30%. Now I am taking it out, I am putting it product wise, right? I am putting product wise, which is telling me, oh, green tea is a loss making product for me. Green tea is a loss making product, whereas profitability wise, yes, Colombian is giving me 43% profit. Darjeeling is giving me close to 40%. Right? If required, I can even sort it in the descending order, which will tell me Colombian is at the top in terms of profitability, 43.4%. The espresso is at 41.8%. Darjeeling X, probably green tea is the least. Mint and amaretto are typically on the lower side. Some such kind of classification is what I get. So this is more and more of aggregation that we are performing at different layers. Right? So any kind of measure that we have created like this, the accumulated profit, because it's a number, it is shown under the measure by default. And now I can simply drag and drop, right, based on different kinds of dimensions, based on the view, I get different levels of computation, right? So this is the value that we are getting, and simply whatever is the view that we have, the active view, the aggregation is generally done at that level of active view. But in some cases, I can even do a fixation of the view. See, whatever is the view that is there, I can very well do. Let's say here, the view is containing product, right? But I can still show the aggregation with respect to market. Though the view is at the product level, the view is here at the product level. If irrespective of whatever is the view, I really want my aggregation to be done, let's say at the market level. Now this is where I can very well say, in the formula, I can very well use the fixed as a field. Okay, now I say accumulated profit 2. Now here the way I give the code is I will do the aggregation. I'll say fixed okay here okay, we will look at these calculations slightly at a later point in time. But yes, these are the aggregate level calculations, and the earlier ones, they are the row level calculation. Now, if I really want to see what is the difference between these two, right? How do I use the row level versus aggregate level? Probably if I have simply pulled out these two values, right, just as a lookout, let me take out the profit. Now the aggregated profit is showing around 31.66, but if I had taken this profit into the view, if I am taking this profit percentage, sorry, if I am taking this profit percentage, right, this is the aggregated accumulated profit, and let me drag even the profit percentage here. Now what I could see with the summation of the profit percentage, if I display both these values, so it is telling me that my accumulated profit is this much. So the aggregated accumulated profit is this much, and profit percentage for all of them, if it is summing, okay, let me take out the aggregated profit out, and if I am looking at the summation of the profit percentage, it is showing me 625 point, right? If I am looking at just the number, it is telling me it's around 625.2. So because this is showing a sum, but let's say I change it to average, still the number is 14.72, whereas when I have pulled out the accumulated profit, the number is, it's an aggregated value, right? I can see these two numbers. Probably if I'm pulling this aggregate profit here, it is showing around 31 kind of a number, whereas average profit, if I am pulling around, it is showing somewhere around 15 kind of a number, right? I can use these two. The average of the profit percentage is giving me around 15%, whereas the accumulated profit is giving me 31. Why is the difference? Because the first one individually, it has computed the profit percentages, and after that for the result it has taken the average. Whereas in the accumulated profit, it has added up all the profits and divided that by the total sale. So the calculation mechanisms are different, and we have to have a good understanding of which one needs to be used in which kind of a case. So the first one is more and more aggregated, and the second one is more and more of the calculation that is done across all the rows of the original data. So it is very important for us to understand the difference between the row level calculation and an aggregate level calculation. So when you are certain that a particular result can be aggregated to any level of detail, we perform it at a row level. But if you say that I can't, there is no meaning, all percentages can't be added up to give an average percentage, in that case it's always better to use an aggregate level calculation parameter itself, calculation field itself. So that's the way I try to work out with the two major levels of calculations, the row level and aggregate level calculations in Tableau. Thanks a lot for listening to this session. Thank you very much.